Hello guys, David Vos here. Oh man, long time no see. Well, it's a beautiful day in Alabama and cloudy, but it's kind of warm out. I hope you're having a wonderful day where you are. Look what we've got here. We got her fixed up so we can do this. I don't even know if I'm going to need this today, but I'm just thinking this is so pretty. I just want to keep that right there, and you know, and if I need it, I'll have it. Oh, friends, we got some stuff that I have to tell you today. And it's with a heavy heart. It's with great sadness. And I'm not playing. I mean this with everything in my soul. I feel bad that I have to do this. And I've thought about it. Been thinking about it. And I don't see another way out of this. I'm going to have to expose somebody that I actually care about a great deal. Now, remember, I'm going to tell you his name, and a lot of your guys are going to say, "Oh, Brother Vos, now settle down." Don't be accusing the brethren, and you know, and that's their business, and you leave them alone, and you mind your own business. Okay, well, you know, that's how I usually roll, but here's the thing. This isn't just some random person out there that's, I think, might end up dying. Not just physically. That wouldn't be the worst part. But if he dies in this condition, I'm scared for his soul. And I know he's probably going to laugh. If he sees this, somebody will probably say, "Oh, Santos, you've got to watch this video that David Vos just put out." And he's going to laugh. And him and his buddies will sit around drinking beers or whatever. You know, popping lion's mane or whatever they're doing. And I'm not making fun of them. I love them dearly. But what I'm saying is, I'm making fun of this. Because I don't know whether to make fun or cry. They're mocking Jesus Christ. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to show you a clip. And I'll show you that clip right now. And then we'll get back to you. Look at this.
And I said, as I've been saying for many years, folks, Satan is Jesus. Folks, Satan is Jesus. Folks, Satan is Jesus.
You got heat for that, huh?
Yeah, and I can't believe
people thought you were hacked, right, or something? Like, did you get hacked?
People are like, "What? Oh, no. Excuse me," was my answer. "Haven't you been watching my videos? I've been basically basing my teaching on that. Basically basing my teaching on that."
Yes. Now, I still hear a lot of you out there saying, "Well, now, still, Dave, even if you don't agree, that's his opinion, and you shouldn't bother him." Well, I'm worried about him, but I'm not just worried about his... You know, I was looking at him the other day, and I thought, man, the man, I thought he looked like he was going into the last stages of life. It looked like he was shaking. And he didn't have a lot of air in his lungs, and it seemed like he's skinny as a rail. He has admitted this many times, and the last video I saw, he was saying that he almost died about a month ago. And I found out exactly why. I didn't know. You know, I think there's a combination of things, but one of the things evidently he's been doing is, he said himself that he was abusing some sort of herb, which, you know, look, we all abuse things from time to time, and I'm just glad that he's not doing it anymore. I'm not here to air out his laundry, but what I'm trying to do is save his soul, because we need an intervention. Okay, all you people out there that believe in Jesus Christ and love all of the children of the Lord, especially individuals that, you know, I have an affinity for him because I feel like a brother to him. I don't know if he knows that. I love him because we were both raised in the same cult, and I don't know if we have the same opinions about that at this point. But I know we both don't like that occult thing. Or I should say the cult, because the occult is something he's very, very happy to be a part of. I'm not a part of the occult, as it's come to mean today. But we both teach a lot of similar things. Astrology, for one, astrotheology, he likes to call it. He likes to call it syncretism and things like that. I usually say esoteric wisdom. We have some differences of opinion, and that's okay. But when you start running around actively creating universities, a school, not unlike something maybe Aristotle, Plato. You know, Plato started the school and he taught Aristotle. And this continued on for a long time. It was a school. Now, how do you have a school? Well, you become a master. You become a teacher. You have to be initiated. And you have to know what you're doing to start an authorized school. There were those that went off on their own in a proud fashion and made their own. They didn't receive their initiation from somebody of authority and given the, sent forth like an apostle to create another school, like the Apostle Paul was sent forth by the other apostles. But there were certain individuals like Crowley that went off and got mad because nobody would have him and they wouldn't teach him. And so he went out and learned some stuff on his own. He went to the dark mysteries and they have their own schools. And this is what I want to explain, because a lot of people don't understand that there are two occults. There are two mystery schools in the world. We've talked about it before. There's the Babylonian, and then there's the higher mysteries. That's the Christian mysteries, and the Hindu mysteries are the higher mysteries. All the religions of the world had both of these mystery schools. But the dark side was taught primarily there in Babylon. There's a reason for that. We're going to cover that. Because remember, it's all about astrology. And the whole world is the circuit, the Galilee. Jesus taught on the circuit of Galilee. And so he went from tribe to tribe preaching the gospel to gather the elect. And so every place in the world is a part of the great wheel, and each of those are the tribes. And the center is at Heliopolis. Remember, it was razed to the ground by Alexander the Great in 330 BC. Now, why would he do that? Have you ever asked yourself that? Why would a man who comes in as a conqueror and ends up, having the greatest empire of at that time, the Grecian Empire, sets up his capital in Athens, and he builds this big Acropolis, this huge temple. People today don't realize these are temples. We know that the Jerusalem had a temple. We know that Babylon had a temple. But, we look at these pyramids, we don't call them temples. Those are pyramids, Dave. Well, those are temples. Same thing with Washington, D.C. That's a temple. And the people who walk in there, the Supreme Court and all these people wearing robes, and your doctors are wearing white, and the Pope's wearing white, and even people that minister in the Protestant churches, and even mine, Mr. Santos, even Jehovah's Witnesses were carrying on with this charade and wearing the little white shirt and the black overcoat, which is the robe. It just keeps changing style, but it's the same principles. And these people have control over the whole world. And it's from the lower priesthood, the laws of the land. It comes from Babylon. You see, the Judeans used to be a part of the entire whole. They were carried off by the teachings of Babylon. They went down into Babylon and they were captive for 70 years. And when they came out with blindness, the Apostle Paul says. And they were the apostates. He told Christians, don't apostatize and go back again under the law, like a dog to his vomit. And those were the lower teachings of Babylon. The higher teachings were over there in Egypt. And Jesus followed in the tradition of the pharaohs, as his wife anointed him for his pharaonic kingship over the land. The mummification of the Egyptian priesthood and the Osiris and Horus and all of this stuff, these were the ancient teachings. Okay, now very similar to those teachings are the teachings of Nimrod, of the teachings of Babylon. They're mirror to the other, but actually the opposite. There is so much that we can cover about this. I don't know how we're ever going to get every little subject talked about. But let me stop there just for a second. We'll get back to where we're at. But I don't want to forget the reason why we're talking about this right now. It's not just Santos that I'm worried about, although I am very worried about him, because that is the doctrine of Antichrist. But worse than that, he's also an idolater at this point.
The sun is God, man. The sun is God, man.
I'm not throwing out names or pointing fingers or, trying to make fun of the man. I love the man. I love all of you. I'm desperately trying to persuade all of you to understand with logic and scriptural evidence, historical concepts, with logical assertions, or whatever we're going to use here, to try and explain and hopefully convince the entire world, if we can, to follow Jesus. Because it's very important that we do so. We're right now about to the end. This is the great tribulation we're entering into right now. The whole world is going to be a place where you are going to be shocked. I don't think, a lot of people are talking about it. Santos is talking about this too. And he's like, oh, this is the world that's coming to an end, blah, blah, blah. We're all talking about it. It's undeniable. The problem is I don't know where or why, when you come down to a place like this, if you had been raised a Protestant or a Jehovah's Witness, and you finally come to the conclusion that there is no Jesus, but you still believe in the Bible. Look, I know that people believe in the Bible and they think it's all an allegory. Jordan Peterson, for one. I've seen a video where he's talking about, is God true? And he's like, well, maybe. That's not going to be good enough, Jordan. I love you too. But if you don't understand that we are at the crux of the end of the whole system, and you better make the right decisions and use your noggin. Oh, he's a Neoplatonist, like me. Sure. I understand all these ancient philosophical terms, old Mr. Jordan Peterson, but don't try to play a little game of let's ride the fence. Listen, I love you. I love all of these people in the world that are trying to become teachers, but it's a very important position to teach people. If you don't know what you're doing or what you're teaching, you shouldn't be teaching. Be certain in your own heart and in your own mind what you're doing, because I'm telling you, there's only going to be two choices coming down here. We're going to join the system and worship the beast. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to end up doing it. If you're going to get deceived, you're going to end up worshiping the beast. See, the whole point is we don't want to follow something, but it's going to be very deceptive. We're going to think, oh, maybe it's the truth. Jesus kept saying, I warn you, do not go after them, Jesus said. There's going to come a time when false prophets and false teachers shall arise, and they will have tickling doctrines that tickle their ears, and they'll draw people in with deception. And Jesus says, do not believe them. The Bible clearly teaches that we should not be idolaters. And before we go any further, I want to show you something that Santos has recently just said. And I want you to understand, because I'm hoping somehow this will get back to him, and he will either confront the issue and perhaps realize and say, you know what, oops, I made a mistake and I shouldn't have said that. Or, look, I got off track and I'm back on track now. And brother, we've all done that. There's no shame in the fact. The worst thing that could happen is if you find out you're wrong and you just ignore it. Everybody, look, it doesn't matter if you're wrong about the temperature outside, or, oh, I was wrong, I didn't know I dug in the wrong hole, or, I dropped my keys and can't find them. These are things we all make mistakes. But when you deny the Lord that bought you, it is a grave, grave thing. Now, for somebody who doesn't know the Lord, then you can't expect them to understand. But this man was taught and knows the scriptures very well. I know this because we were raised in the same religion. The fact that he's gone off the path this far, and he's now an idolater, and he has not accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, because if he had, he would know. Jesus says, come and follow me. My yoke is light. My burden is easy. He's not talking about the law or this government, the beast system of Cain. As we said, we're going to show that Cain made Babylon. And those are the mysteries at the bottom of the wheel. Now, why is it, remember we said that Egypt, before we say this, I want to show you that little clip right here of Santos. Watch this.
The sun is God, man. The sun is God, man.
You see what I'm saying, friends? Idolatry is wrong. I know that Santos is always saying, oh, you're interpreting the Bible wrong, Dave. Well, I don't know if he even says the word Dave, but I think I've seen him lately talking some things and making some assertions. He called somebody really stupid because they didn't read books, and I think he's talking about me. But I could be wrong, and that's fine. I hope he is talking about me, because that means maybe he's watching this. And if he is, then maybe he'll realize that, man, something's gone astray here. Maybe some of these guys sitting in the seat there at the university has confused you. This guy that was doing the astrological readings the other day, I have some things to say about that, and I don't even know his name. I'll probably do a video on that one, because I love all these men. And look, if they won't debate me, you know, Weiss wouldn't debate me. They got the Flat Earth guy, and he's on the Santos show all the time. I guess they're working together. David Weiss. David Weiss, I offered to debate him on the Flat Earth. He refused. He wanted to take the show over and bring his charts and read it off of a board or a prompter or something. And I said, no, just you and me. We're just going to talk. If you don't know your subject well enough to be able to talk from your heart and to prove your point, you think the earth is flat. If you can't do that without charts and books and just you and I, equal time, then he wouldn't do it. Because he's not comfortable with this teaching enough in his own heart. He's got to use some talking points. And this is why he won't debate me. Now, I don't think at this point that Santos would debate me. If he's willing, I'm willing. But no charts. Because this isn't about, you know, us getting on there with the charts and explaining all of our views. That's not what this is going to be about. We need to talk it over. Brother to brother. We're sincere here. And I know you're sincere. If you are, then you'll have to come to a place where you stop just a little bit and say, now hang on, I used to be a Christian too, and I knew all these points, and what has happened to me that I'm now an idolater? This is the question, and I'll tell you what's happened. This is what I think it is. As I said, there are two mysteries. Santos and these other guys are following the wrong mysteries. There are the mysteries that are at the bottom of the wheel, and everything is upside down. If you notice, there's always these circle things, and in the circle, you've got the five-sided star. That's the good side, the good mysteries. That's Jesus with his head, the first peak. Well, I'll write it for you, okay? So here is the Astrological Wheel. And they write a star like this. Something like that. You see, this is the head. These are the arms. And this is his feet, nailed. This is why Jesus never died with his feet together, as some people portray. His feet was apart and nailed separate. But this is a diagram to show the right side up wheel, because the head's on top, and that's Jesus dying on the cross. And it represents the sun going down and dying for 3 days, and then the resurrection. Now, let me see if I can erase this a little bit. It's going to be kind of hard because this is not too good of an eraser. So we're not going to do this real well because I don't got a lot of time to stand here and erase boards. But just kind of briefly here. The other one, the corresponding symbol on the other side, is this Baphomet. And he's got two horns, right? That's the two ends of the star, but it's upside down now. And his head is down here. And his arms are, he's hanging upside down. That's the upside down. And I'm not doing a very good job of that, but if you can see what I'm getting at here, that's an upside down star. And when you see things that are upside down, a lot of times you'll see Catholics, like the Pope wears an upside down cross or something on the back of his chair or something. So we know that he's become apostate, or he doesn't know what he's doing anymore. Some of these individuals don't, because they've been deceived. They followed after the mysteries, thinking that was the mysteries. They're very deep, and it takes a lot of effort to understand these mysteries. One needs to have education and spend time in prayer. Now, if you are looking at the darker mysteries, they don't talk about praying. meditating upon the symbols and receiving the Holy Spirit. They don't know that the meaning of these mysteries. They're following what we call the Kabbalah. Now, about 500 years ago, there were some Judeans, the Sephardic Jews that were in the area around Spain. And they wrote a book called the Zohar and the Sifra Yitzhar. And those are what they call Kabbalah. And the Tree of Life, the Sefer Yetzirah. And it's a whole thing that they do all the 32 ways of wisdom and everything. Everybody's into this. And they're like, oh, and Madonna's like, I'm going to read all this information and become a Kabbalist. I'm going to understand all this stuff. Well, remember, the Kabbalists are looking for Metatron. That's from the lower mysteries, the carnal mysteries. There were two cities of Enoch. There's an Enoch from Cain and there's an Enoch from Seth. As we said, the original home of Adam was in America, and we've done videos on this, and if you're interested in more evidence for all of this, you'll have to go back and watch some other videos, because we can't get it all in today. But a lot of you know all of this stuff if you're following these videos. So after the flood, the whole earth changed its form, and they started over here in the new, and at that time it was the New World, right? The main body of continent in Europe and the Middle East. And Cain came and created Babylon after the Tower of Babel was separated. Because at that point, they were all one. Every nation, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, were there at Babylon. They were all worshiping in unity at the gate of El. Okay? But when Cain took it over by infiltration, by the law of Hammurabi, the laws of Hammurabi, and this great city-state of Babylon, and this great harlot that was in control. It was the mysteries of Naamah. Naamah was a woman that is talked about in the book of Genesis, a lineal descendant of Cain. Now, why would the Bible have two genealogies? It's the same reason why the Bible has two genealogies in the New Testament, friends. But no Christian anywhere seems to understand this. There are two mysteries. There are two genealogies. There are two cities. There are two Enochs. Two phoenix birds, right? Coming, two kingdoms rising up out of the ashes. The one rises up out of the ashes because that bird died and was burned up in chaos. And it rises out of the ashes. That's the plan of Yahweh, to reestablish his earthly kingdom and these deep mysteries that he taught in Babylon. So, in the New Testament, we have two genealogies, one in Matthew and one in Luke. Now, Christians think, well, that's crazy. Jesus was born of a virgin, so I guess there can't be any genealogy from Joseph, because he wasn't the father. Jesus was born from a virgin, correct? So what do we got a whole genealogy from Joseph to Adam? That would be completely ridiculous if he wasn't born of Joseph. As we said, Joseph is Seb, the father of Horus. Seb's wife was Isis. Actually, Seb's wife was Nephthys. But Osiris had a relationship with her. And this is the same story as David and Bathsheba, Zeus and Rhea. It's the carnal ego that is abusing the feminine, the beautiful spiritual power, the woman, the Holy Spirit. They have a relationship, but her relationship, she's reduced to a slave. The Bible calls it a whore, but if you look that up in the Strong's Concordance, that word means holy. The sanctuary is also the word holy, because that's where that holy rite took place. The Ariels Gamos. And it does have to do with heirs, Ariels, Gamos. And game means Gamos or game. It's a game about the heir. And who is going to be the heir? Whose seed is going to rule? So, there are two genealogies in the Old Testament. The genealogy that goes from Cain to Naamah is important because it's the woman's seed. The woman who gives birth to the Messiah, who has to marry the king of the north, and they have a seed. The heaven and earth that marry. So in the New Testament, you have two genealogies, just like the one with Seth and Cain, now you've got the one to Joseph, the male, and to Mary. And Mary, her genealogy goes back to Adam. Some of the same characters goes back to King David, but there are different people in the list because her genealogy follows the Egyptian line of the pharaohs. So in the good mysteries, it is a great mystery that heaven and earth comes together, heaven and earth, in a pure matrimony. And we lift the veil, the conscious nature lifts the veil and looks deep within this beautiful bride, the mother, your wife. The great mystery is going to be unveiled, sex. But what are you going to do with the sex? Is it going to be in a mundane kind of sex? A lustful nature? Harlotry as we understand that word? No. It's going to be a holy, holy wedding. The great bride of Christ. So the other one was a whore because she was condemned and cursed. So when the darkness marries the woman, he condemns her and makes her a whore. That's why she's riding the beast. It's the same story as Andromeda riding the beast and Perseus saving her and delivering her to her father, and then they get married. Every nation on the face of the earth has all of these teachings. The teachings of Inanna down in hell. Remember, she had to overcome every layer of hell. And each time she went down, Inanna, she lost a layer of clothing. In other words, the material, physical, outward manifestation. We are that soul, a spiritual being. We come into hell and we lose layers as we go until we get down to this physical plane. And then we ascend back unto the Father again. And then we have the great wedding. So we have these two mysteries. On the other side, the mystery was about murder, vengeance, death, and slavery. So what they did in their sanctuary was they would murder animals and bleed them out to atone for their sins. A life for a life. What they got was the life of an animal, a temporary life, an animalistic beast nature. So the mysteries are called an abomination by the Lord. And he drove out the money changers and those that were buying and selling the meat and slaughtering all these sheep. They said there were millions upon millions of sheep slaughtered every Passover for years in Jerusalem. And it was a disgusting sight. And it upset the Lord because he says, my house should be a house of prayer. And then Jesus came in and orchestrated and acted out the great prophecy in the stars. When he was born of the Virgin and met the harlot who had been abused and was ready to be stoned by her master. And he redeemed her. So these two mysteries have come down to us. But most people don't understand there are two mysteries. And they don't understand what these two mysteries are. What they are is that there really isn't two separate, because we've said before that Yahweh created his own government with 144,000 running the world. And he's got his own 72 deacons and his own 12 apostles and stuff like this. Well, he does. Now how and why? How do we know that? Because all the sciences of every nation had the same circle. And they divided into 12. And yet the Bible says in the book of Revelation there are 24 elders. And why is this? Because the 24 elders are the 12, but they each have wives. Male and female. The universe is male and female, always. You've seen the Chinese thing where they've got this thing like this where there's... Have you seen that before? Okay, the wheel of the male and the female, that's what this is about. It started with our Father in heaven, who was an androgynous being, and it was called the Virgin, who gave birth from her womb, the entire universe, by herself. That's why the Apostle Paul says is that in the Judean mysteries, a man is the head of his wife. And because they said the woman came second and Adam was first. And so the woman was deceived, thoroughly deceived, and so she can't be the ruler. But the Apostle Paul says that in reality, who comes first, the man or the woman? Because neither is, he says, neither is the man without the woman, nor is the woman without the man. See, the true teaching is that we have to do this together. But then he says that the man is from the woman because he comes from her womb. He is born. A man is born from the woman. So in the mysteries, a man comes from the woman. It's the opposite. We got to have the man, the strong brute, ruling. But the strong brute represents the flesh. And the flesh, in its ignorance, separated itself from the spirit. And this was a bad thing. And it was due to law. Remember when Jesus said to the Pharisees, let no man put them asunder what God has yoked. So our Father in heaven, Elohim, made man, male and female, made he them. In his own image made he them. And they were good. And there was no tree, no temptations, nothing. But Yahweh comes along and splits them in half, not from a rib, but from the half. As we've said many times. That's what the word means in Hebrew. The opposite half. Same word that's used when it talks about Zion. It's at the opposite end of the earth. Because it's the spiritual. It's the daughter of Zion. It's the woman that's got to come down from heaven. Spiritual. It comes at the latter times. It's going to start from the ensign that is raised up far away at the opposite ends of the earth, which is America, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, which in ancient times was the Atlantic Sea. It's not the river, but that word just means water, or the ocean of Ethiopia. Beyond the Atlantic Sea is the great Zion, pretty for situation, the glory of all the earth, the city of the grand king. Now, after the flood, that location that was there in America was taken. The boat went over and flew and landed on Mount Ararat or something, which Ararat just is another word for earth. Ararat. He landed somewhere on the earth. We don't know where. It's not had anything to do with this particular mountain today that we call Ararat. Although maybe it does. We don't know. Wherever they landed, they ended up all in one accord there at Babylon. And they were going to get to God. They had knowledge. They had wisdom. They had language. The mysteries was all unified. But at that point, Yahweh divided in half the male and the female. And he went even further. He divided up the world between his three sons. Same thing that Anu did with Enlil and Enki and Nenhadsack. Nenhurdsag, I can't say that word. Nenhurdsag is also known as Damkina. This is where we get the word dame, madame. It's a title because it comes from one of the gods. Just as Adonai became Lord. These were deities, and then kings would use their names as a title. Mary in Greek is this word because if you look up Mary and Martha in Greek, it's a title. It means milady, madame. So Damkina was also known as the lady Ki. Dam, madame, Kina. Ki is earth. So it was Mother Earth. And so Anu, being the heavenly father, like in the Greek Uranus, the light of the heaven, or Anu, but in the Sumerian, he's just called Anu. And he had 3 children, and he divided up the world. One of the children was the earth. The other was the heavens, and the other was the sea. And so in Greek mythology, you have Zeus being over the heavens with a thunderbolt. You've got Poseidon that had a trident that was over the water, over the ocean. And then you had the Hades, who had the key to the abyss. So you'll have these different realms, and each one has a god. So the idea, even in Christianity, that there's only one God is not true. What we have is one God, the Father, out of whom all things came, and one only begotten Son of the Father. Now, that's a family. It's an Elohim. It's plural. But here's the thing. There are 2 circles. There's the night, 12 hours in the day, and 12 hours at night. Both of these gods have their circle. Time runs both sides. Because when we came into the world, we were split by this Yahweh, our psyche. And we used to be androgynous beings. Because it says in Genesis chapter 1, he made them male and female. And there was no arguing, there had no sex, there was no death. You know, when you give birth, then you have to die. Because when you're immortal, you're neither born nor you die. We're living in a mortal world. And you know, Adam was not mortal. His son Enosh, that word means mortal. By the time of Enosh, mankind had become mortal. See, Adam is something that people do not even understand. We're not going to get completely into that in this video. But what I'm trying to do is show you that the mysteries came down. One from Cain, he built the city. And what did they do? Well, it tells you in the book of Genesis that the demons started talking to him. And they had relations with his daughters. And they began to make giants in the earth. And so there were in Cain's area, after the flood, Naamah was his last daughter. And she married Noah. And therefore she's the great Naamah, or Mama. And this was Mamu in the Sumerian. So the two mysteries came down, one through the woman's seed, Naamah. It's the same story that David saw Bathsheba. That wasn't his woman. Zeus saw Rhea, looked down and took her. You know, Judah found a harlot along the way. Joshua married Rahab the harlot. Samson married Delilah, a Philistine. Ruth and Naomi, all the way down. Jesus married the harlot, the holy priestess from the lineage of Cain. There's so much more we could get into. There are so many ends that we could piece together to help you see this. I'm just giving an overview of this because we've covered a lot of this in previous videos. We've got all of this in the scriptures that explains every step of the way. The two priesthoods that were there at Bethel and the one at Shiloh that was eventually taken. The Ark of the Covenant was eventually taken, and he made a house for the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem. Jerusalem's south of Bethel. Bethel's up, Jerusalem's down. Jerusalem, then, is the city, not of our Father in heaven, but of Yahweh, the ego. And what was in that Ark of the Covenant? Well, Aaron's rod. And what is Aaron's rod? If you read the account, you'll see that Aaron's rod was magical. It blossomed, an almond blossom. And it's funny because in the temple, in the Most Holy, there is a lamp. It had 7 candlesticks. And each of the candles were placed in a little cup that they called an almond blossom. They fashioned it out of gold. It was the shape of an almond blossom. There were 7 almond blossoms. And these almond blossoms represent your 7 chakras. Buddhism talks about the lotus plant. The New Testament talks about the twin flame that was upon their head that lit. Because all the chakras were lit. Now, the almond blossom then, it's described as an almond for a reason. Sometimes you'll find that it has different, like sometimes it's described as a rose. This is what the rosary beads, and the rose represents the woman's area where the virgin birth that we all are spiritually born. But in this case, it's using the almond blossom. The symbolism could not be more clear. The almond represents the lower house. The lower house, Jerusalem, is where in the ark of that holy place, the sacrum, which is a literal place in your body called the sacrum, and there are 5 bones that are fused together. Those 5 represents the laws of Moses, just like the 5 pillars there at the pool, and the man couldn't get well because he couldn't get down because the law of Moses had crippled him. We're all lame and we're all blind because we're following the laws of this world. We couldn't get down into the water because of the 5 pillars or the 5 husbands that we had that we no longer have because we left him. And now we're going to get stoned, cursed, judged by the law. We're trying to get away from this guy, right? We like David, who came and saved us from Uriah the giant. Yeah, Uriah was a giant, one of the Nephilim. She wanted to be delivered, okay? She was married to an ogre. He didn't treat her right, and that's us. This is the soul. So, the book of Revelation talks about this beast and the harlot, and it talks about the woman arrayed with the sun, and this is all the two different mysteries. So, what I'm trying to say is that there are things going on in the world that people don't understand. So when they go and they read Kabbalah, they think, oh, this is the mysteries. And they're deep. And it talks about the coming of the Metatron and the coming of their Messiah, right? Jesus said when he came to the earth, he looked at the Jews, he says, I have come in my Father's name. But when he comes, and you did not receive me, but when he comes in his own name, you will receive him. Who's going to come in their own name? Well, the book of the Bible, the Old Testament, tells us over and over again. Yahweh says, I will do all things in my own name. I don't recognize anyone else. I don't recognize any other God, and I'm the only Savior. I am God and there is none else. And I myself will redeem my own people. And of course, as we've said, his way of redeeming people is to murder everybody as a price, a life for a life, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So he murders everybody because somebody's got to die, right? Because he's angry. Now, conversely, in the Jesus' teachings, he says you can't do anything about this. Pay Caesar's things to Caesar. Don't worry, look, don't hang on to that coin. Just give it back to him. That belongs to him. This world, let him have it. Because you see, you're a child of the living God, the child of light. We're going to pass over from this world unto another world. We don't care about the body. Yeah, if you don't do everything perfectly and keep all the laws, you're going to die. Well, guess what? You're going to die anyway because Yahweh has cursed you under this law. You can strive like a slave round and around, the catch-22. You'll never get out of this place alive unless you accept the covenant of Jesus, which is love. And it is not some thing where you got to go blank out your mind and beat your head up against a wall. That's not what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. These are lies that were taught by Mr. Rockefeller, who created in the last 100 and some years, is financed these groups called New Age or whatever, which has all these truths that Christians didn't know. Reincarnation and karma and all stuff is true. But we didn't understand the lingo because we got different words in the West. But then they threw in some stuff because the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas and all these Upanishads and ancient scriptures are so vast we could never read them, so we wouldn't know. And we were told, oh, well, it says you can see auras right there. No, it doesn't. You can't see an aura because an aura is spiritual. And we can only see with our eyes, with the physical eyes, the light within the spectrum of light. So that's another thing, and people keep just repeating this stuff. Like we talked about the twin flame thing. I want to show you today the true meaning of this twin flame. As you guys know, Plato was a student of Aristotle. Or I should say, Aristotle was a student of Plato. And Plato came after Pythagoras. Pythagoras started this whole philosophical thing in Greece. Remember I said they went down to, Alexander the Great went down to Egypt and leveled Heliopolis. Why do you suppose he did that? Because Heliopolis used to be a great, huge dome with a human male phallus, which we have the same thing in Washington. We've got the dome, which they call the vulva or the vagina, and we've got the Washington's monument. And in between this, we have this big pond. It's called the baptismal font. This is a temple. I was telling somebody this the other day, is that when we think about temples, see, we think, oh, well, Jerusalem had a temple, and Babylon may have had a temple or something. But those down there in Egypt, those were pyramids, and that thing over there in Washington, that's a political building, right? That's some sort of a court or politics or something. Well, wait a minute now. Why are these secular individuals, it's only politics, they don't believe in religious views or moral law. They can't make you not lie or, they're not about morals. This is about politics, civil law. So that's not a temple. Well, why are they wearing robes? The Supreme Court, black robes. Why do they have the white collar just showing? White collar workers, meaning that they're not grunts. They don't have to work. They got a robe, they got a degree. And that white is cloaked until you get your higher degrees, and then you take off the black coat, and then you got a white doctor. You're a dulcier. And then you can have students. You're a master. Okay, this is still going on. People just don't know it's the same exact thing. We've got different words for it. They may have called it teachings about spiritual things or religion. Or even the word religion really never was a word until recently. I don't know what that word means. But it doesn't mean that there's no, the separation of church and state that we supposedly have here in America. It's ridiculous. There was never a separation here or there. They have the right to punish you for moral things. You're not allowed to perjure yourself. You're not allowed to. I mean, they can make any law they want. They can say they're not going to tell you what to think or what to believe, but they do. So it's the same thing. You're still wearing the robe. We're still being judged at the court of the temple. That's the temple, Washington, D.C. And it looks an awful lot like the Vatican, doesn't it, with a little dome? Because the Vatican was the headquarters of this great system before that. And before it was the Vatican, it was in Rome. Before that, it was in Athens, Greece. And why do you suppose it was in Athens? Because Alexander the Great went down there and leveled the one in Egypt at Heliopolis. Why was it called Heliopolis? Because that's a Greek word. Helios, which means the sun, the helium, the halo, right up above. Helium in the elemental chart is right at the top, along with hydrogen. The sun's made out of helium and hydrogen. And you go down through air and all that stuff until you get to the heavy metals. Saturn or uranium, Uranus, plutonium, Pluto at the very end. So the chakras is from the higher to the bottom. The bottom down here is the lower kingdom. Athens, we know what it looked like. We've seen, I mean, it's gone. The city's not there anymore, the ancient Acropolis. But there's pieces of it still. And we can see it's got the pillars, and it must have looked an awful lot like, because they replicated everything after Athens, right? And why? Because Pythagoras went down to Egypt and learned the mysteries from the pharaonic priests. Solon and Thales were Egyptian pharaohs, priests. Pythagoras learned the mysteries from them. He went to Persia, up in Syria, and he learned the Zoroastrian mysteries. And then he went to India and he learned the Hindu mysteries. And he got a license from all the world to set up the headquarters to all of these ancient mysteries. So Pythagoras taught the mysteries. Remember the Pisces Vesica, or Vesica Pisces? This was something that was taught. It had geometry. What is geometry? Well, we today call it Gematria. Geometry is not about numbers. They could have cared less about numbers. We're studying numbers, not because we're fascinated with numbers, but we're studying logic. Gematria, or geometry, is a science. And in order to understand these numbers, because today we just think it's a set of numbers, right? Well, it wasn't just a set of numbers. What were numbers in those days? They were letters. Every letter had a number. And you've got to be able to understand the holy science to put those words and letters together. That's why there's 22 languages and 22 letters in the Hebrew language. And in English, there's 26. The reason for that is because there's actually, in the Bible, there were 24 elders around the throne. So why does the Hebrews only have 22? Because they have 3 of their letters that are vowels. And so, or 4 of the Yahweh were the vowels, YHWH. And they used them as vowels, but they would pass for consonants as well. So they had the 22 letters and 4 of them that acted as vowels that made the 26. Well, as this language went around and people had different versions of the same, Phoenician made the letters as we know them today from Phoenicia. But it was created, this language was created by the Enoch, or the Phoenicians, from Cain. And it was orchestrated by Yahweh when he divided their language. So what it means is he flipped it backwards. So in Hebrew, everything is backwards. English is a higher language than Hebrew, because English is from the Egyptian. And if you look at the Egyptian, it's the other way. So we were talking about that the other day when you read mother, the mother of everything was Nut. And they don't say the word T, it's nu. So N-U. But in Sumerian or Babylonian, it's U-N. Una or Anu. So it's all backwards. You read from left to right instead of right to left. So in English, we still have the 22 letters and 4 vowels. Now, somebody would say, yes, David, we've got 5 vowels. Your theory is not working here. Well, it's just because language has come down to us in this manner that sometimes we can use certain letters as vowels and as consonants. So we have A, E, I, O, and those are vowels, period. U. U is sometimes in our language a consonant. So in other languages like V or B or U or W or something like that, it's changed positions. But ultimately there are 26 letters, but there are 22 consonants and 4 vowels, and that's the holy language. So Yahweh is this sacred name, and they say it's so sacred you can't pronounce it. So what's special about 4 vowels? YHWH, which is 4 vowels in Hebrew. Why is it sacred, and why can't you pronounce it? Because you can't pronounce vowels. E, I, E, A, U, whatever. I, E, A, Yahweh, or Yahweh. This was the noise that a donkey makes. Yahweh! We have shown that this was the sacred letters because they were different than the other letters. They were vowels, and they help manifest things into the physical realm. So you can't pronounce a word without vowels. The Hebrew language with the 22 letters have no vowels. Well, they do have vowels, but 4 of their consonants they turned into vowels. Actually 3, because YHWH has 2 H's, so it's just YHW. And so this is the IEO or IEA, IEA or EIO. I don't even know how they pronounced it. It wasn't really pronounced. It was some mystical parable to explain that everything in the universe came from the letters, and they are unmanifested until Yahweh comes along and he manifests it into the physical carnal realm. So therefore it's magic, because you use it, the words or the letter of the law is a curse, and they make spells. They spell it. Once you write it down and you spell it, and you add these holy sacred vowels to the consonants, you have manifestation. This is what the whole Tree of Life thing is about, with the 32 ways of wisdom and all of that. So how many of these letters are there? Well, there are 24 letters, and there are 2 that stand before the Lord of the whole earth. 22 and 2 makes 24. So in Hebrew, they just stuck with the 22 consonants. In English, we went with 26 because we had the 22 consonants and 4 vowels. Even that got messed up over time. Now we got 5 vowels. But some of the, like A, E, I, O are always vowels, but U may be a carryover, kind of a duplicate, because the way we pronounce things have changed, and we've tried to add a vowel here or there or whatever. But ultimately, consonants and vowels, there's only 26. But 2 of them are the Father and the Mother, and the rest are the 24 that are around that throne. And this is the sacred Gematria. Okay, and you know this Gematria, you understand letters, and you know how to manifest. It's magic, okay? But it isn't something that people think today, hokey pokey, it's devil worship or anything like this. They know what they're doing, okay? They understand these mysteries. But the world today has lost these mysteries. So we use geometry to understand the universe. What? somehow we use geometry to measure the stars. It has nothing to do with that, actually. That's only a facade. The truth is that Pythagoras was not trying to understand literally the stars as much as he was trying to understand the universe and himself. Know thyself, O man. So, geometry is about trying to understand space and angles, circumference. It's measuring, it's understanding the physical. So, how would the words, Gematria, the numbers, how would it have anything to do with space, measurements, math? Because our words create and manifest the universe. It makes spatial, geometric. That's why in Masonic teachings they have the square and the compass. They're building the universe, the temple. Okay, they have to have a ruler. They have to be able to understand how to create. It's not about building temples. It's about manifesting the things around you. Remember that ultimately there's only 24, because we know that because it's geometry. You can't, the circle has always got to be divided into 12 or 24 or multiples, 144,000. It has to be 12 or 24. It's 12 with the feminine side making it 24. They're all married, and this is an important teaching, the marriage of these particular individuals, because we'll talk about what certain ones who knew the mysteries, such as Plato, who was initiated into these mysteries, what he said about this, the 72,000 that were androgynous beings that were cut in half, and that's what the 144,000 is, and they're sacred brides and bridesmaids. They're the holy virgins that the 140,000 talked about in the book of Revelation. These are virgins, and they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Remember, Jesus was there, and he had these virgins following him around, the Vestal virgins. Well, we're going to read a little scripture that explains this further in the book of Ecclesiastes here in just a minute. So in other words, these languages weren't the original. The original had 24 and 2 vowels, which were the 2 that stand before the Lord of the whole earth. And the Lord of the whole earth is Jesus and his Father, I should say. And so his Father is the Lord of the whole earth. And beside him is the 2. And beyond that is the 24. So that makes the 22 and the 2 makes the 24. Now in English, because we have 26, it just means that we've come down to understanding that we need vowels too. But we've got a couple of extra letters that we sometimes use as a vowel because we've come down so many thousands of years that we pronounce things so differently that we have fudged a little bit on the number of, because remember, Yahweh divided the languages. But we still have this one unique feature. In English and in Egyptian and certain languages, it was the opposite of the Babylonian Sumerians. So the city of Babylon was built in the east. Now why is that if it's supposed to be the southern part of the wheel? And the Egyptian was west, originally in America. Well, because it's the western part of the wheel, or the spring equinox, is where the city is built. The good city. It's the city or the woman, and it's the spring. The house, this is the whole house on top. Or you could represent it as a circle, 12 hours. 12 hours on top, 12 hours on bottom, or 12 and 12. Like our clocks goes around 12 and then goes around again at night. Either way, you've got 24 houses, or 12 houses with a male and a female in each one. And there are 6 on top and 6 on the bottom, or 12 on top and 12 on the bottom, include their wives. And this was taught in all the ancient, even in Zeus talked about take 6 of the giants and threw them into hell. Well, the giants are the astrological constellations. And they were all androgynous. They all had wives. So this is the holy wedding. The virgins, the Vestal virgins, were the 144,000. Okay, there were 72,000 males and 72,000 females. They were the original deities. They came after the Cyclops and the giants. And so the gods, the original gods, which was chaos, right? The Tiamat and the Abyssals or Abzu, these guys didn't like their creations as they would come on. So they got rid of the giants. They didn't like them. And the Cyclops and the Titans and all these ones. And then when humans came along, it says they were great and almost as great as the gods. In fact, the gods feared them because they were so amazing. They were androgynous beings. They all had 4 hands and 4 feet and 2 sets of genitalia. Well, in order to stop their power, their threat to the gods, because they thought that, you know, they were threatened somehow, they had to take and cut them in half so that we were now male and female, and we lost our soulmate. Okay, we couldn't find him. And it says that mankind got so sad and depressed that they couldn't go on anymore, and they started just dying off. And then God looked down and said, my goodness, the people are dying off. That's because they didn't find their soulmates. So they were cut in half. We were separate. We were psychotic. This was what Jesus was talking about. It says, let no man bring them asunder. This is slavery. So that we're not allowed to be joined unto the soulmate so that we have perfect harmony and peace. This will be the great day or the great wedding. You've heard of the Moonies that have this whole thing where they believe that the whole second coming is about a great wedding. Well, they're right about that. It is about a great wedding. And this great wedding won't just be Jesus marrying Mary Magdalene, but it's all of the 144,000 being joined together. And that is the power which allows them. In other words, remember how David took Bathsheba? Okay, the higher and the lower worlds come together. That's the unification. Solomon, through the 1,000 wives, unified the southern and the northern kingdoms. Remember, the northern kingdom, where they went to go get their husband, was Laban's house. There's the southern and the northern kingdom. And they have to be brought together in unity. So there was a king from the northern and a queen from the southern, and they always had this wedding. This is why David married Bathsheba. Who is Sheba? Seba, Seb, Joseb. Seb is the god who was married to Nut. This is the great original father that we were talking about, the Abzu. And so Seb is the father. Nut was the mother, Nu. So Seb is Joseph. And Joseph went down into Egypt and became the great Pharaoh. So Sheba, or Seb, is the lineal descendant of the pharaohs, the seed of the woman. And this is why David married her. Sheba really means Egypt, the southern kingdom. And they had as much power and authority as the king. In fact, the mysteries were taught to the king through the woman in the holy priesthood. And she anointed her husband, and she taught them the wisdom. We did a whole video on Deborah, who was the mother of Israel, and taught Samson and Samuel and King David. So, all of this is symbolic. There are 2 mysteries. The Babylon mysteries are the laws of Moses or Hammurabi, because when they came out of Babylon after 70 years of captivity, they brought with them the laws of Hammurabi, and they called it the laws of Moses. And they brought with them all of these slavery laws, the physical murder of animals, vengeance, warfare, genocide. These were the lower commandments, the egotistical, fleshly ways of this dark physical world. And so it's the beast kingdom. And people who are studying these mysteries from the Kabbalah, that is from the 3rd book of Enoch, Metatron, or the Jewish Midrash, really, it's inspired of Yahweh. It's really holy scripture, but it's telling you the workings of the dark side. And there are those who are saying, oh, I found the truth. We're supposed to go out and sacrifice animals. Okay, you found the dark mysteries. We don't do that. El Elyon came to Abraham through Melchizedek, which is the king of righteousness. And he brought bread and wine, and they had communion. And he made a promise. And the Apostle Paul says the law that came into being 430 years later with Yahweh did not make void the promise with El Elyon. We have a promise. We have a Father in heaven who loves us. It's a different thing. These are the mysteries of Jesus that have always been there. They were there in Egypt, but they fought with the ones. Remember, Thoth fought Marduk. Marduk was from Babylon. Thoth was from Egypt. These 2 sons fought. And they're still fighting today. It's the flesh and the spirit, Jacob and Esau. And I'm telling you that if you think that these teachings of tantric sex and all of this stuff that you're learning from because even in India, there are the two mysteries. Tantric sex is from the other lower mysteries. So, you see, in the higher mysteries, we don't get involved in idolatry. We don't mistake the sun as for God. We understand these mysteries are esoteric wisdom. We're not blasphemers. We're not ignorant. We're not deceived. We have the mysteries. We teach them in its purest form. We don't run around wearing crosses upside down or right side up usually, because we understand this is a symbol of our power. It is not our power. Our power is within us. It is a spiritual power. We don't see auras. We know that we're physical, and our kingdom is no part of this world. So we don't worship the sun. It's a symbol. And we don't think that Jesus and Satan are the same. They're not the same. Now, if you believe that, it may be that he's confused by, remember, we've been talking about how Lucifer is not Satan. There's only one place in the Bible where Lucifer is mentioned. It's in Isaiah. As I've said, Yahweh's the devil, not Jesus. Jesus is not the devil. And people who teach that must be corrected. And I pray for their soul if they continue to teach this. Because, listen, Jesus is humble and meek and mild, and he's not going to get angry if you don't understand. But if you blindly persist in teaching people to go down a path that's going to lose their soul, there's got to be a reason. You talk about synchronicity, Santos. What is happening to you synchronistically that you are now involved in this? Because this is not the truth. You are following the mysteries of Babylon, of Cain. You're not following the mysteries there in Egypt that Jesus followed, that Pythagoras followed. Now, later on, Plato may have fallen from that pedestal because he's the one that wrote the thing, the Republic. I think they kind of went dark because when they leveled Heliopolis, the reason they did that is because they didn't want anybody. Remember, I was telling somebody else this the other day. Imagine if we had a war with Russia. Would we say, oh, that's great, now we win. We can all go to the Kremlin and tell them and have them tell us what to do? No, we won. So we level the Kremlin. And now we believe in Washington, right? We're ruled over by the American government. So maybe we'll go build a capital that looks like ours in Russia, but we're going to level that Kremlin, right? See what Alexander did. He leveled Heliopolis because that was the great hub that we keep talking about. The real city of Jerusalem. The real heavenly city. The one that was in Egypt that was from Seth down to Noah through Shem. That was true worship at Heliopolis. That's why he leveled it. And all the libraries and stuff that were down in the basement, they took and they hid him. They carried him around. Some of them were preserved. Some of them were murdered and gone forever. By the time the Catholics came along in something like 265 AD, they had burned Antioch. Well, they took all those books that were in Heliopolis, and they took them to the place called losing my mind here. Alexandria. Okay, this is very important. This Alexandria. It's very important to the elite, shall we call them? I don't like that word either. Because they're all, this Alexa thing? Where they're like, Alexa, what time is it? Or whatever. Okay, this is the Amazon, AI voice. Well, Alexa is short for Alexandria. And that had the library. But you see, that was after Alexander the Great, Alexander, leveled the original teachings and inserted, they ran Thoth out of there. Read your history. And they went into the desert. They were the Essenes. They were the Coptic Christians. They were the Nazarenes. They were the Essenes. And they did not worship at Jerusalem, but at Bethel. And in the desert over by the river, on the Jordan River, they were baptizing. They had these mysteries. These were the good mysteries, but even the ones that were following the true mysteries, like John the Baptist, did not recognize Jesus right away. He had to ask, are you the one? Because they were all looking for the one. And many were deceived because they didn't understand what was going to happen. And some of them had gotten deceived. Now, I was telling somebody else this the other day that we have a story in the Bible about certain women. And rightly, some have said that several of these women were all the same woman, even though they didn't always call it Mary Magdalene. Sometimes it was just, she's a woman at the well, or she's a woman that was being stoned or something. These were all the same Mary Magdalene. They had to stone her because she had another husband or a harlot or whatever. I think they knew what this woman was. They knew it was his wife. They knew what he believed. That's why they stoned they crucified Jesus, and they crucified his woman. Okay, they crucified them both. Okay, but Jesus saved the woman before she died. Then he died on a cross. That's exactly the same teachings in all of the ancient esoteric wisdom. So just as there was several women in the Bible that really was Mary Magdalene, there are several men by different names that are the same person. There's a guy we call Judas Iscariot. Now, who was Judas? He represents, that's a Latin version of the word Judea, okay, the lower kingdom. And who were they? Well, they were Pharisees. Who were the Pharisees? Well, the Pharisees and the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection. Why? Because they were of the lower mysteries. The law, you must die. Yeah, they were Babylonian. They came out of Babylon, the Judeans, and they were teaching the lower mysteries. So Judas then was a plant. It was the Sanhedrin that sent Judas in as a spy. And this is why Jesus says, go do what you must do quickly. Jesus knew they had infiltrated this world with their spies. Because remember, Yahweh believes that you can lie. And genocide and murder, that's his tactics. War. But Jesus said, no, we're getting out of the world. Turn the other cheek. Let's go. All you got to do is win your souls with patience. Trust me and believe in me and receive my covenant, which is what? Don't go by the other covenant. Eye for an eye and tooth for tooth. Don't go by all these silly teachings that they have. Because they're wrong. So this true teaching comes down from the true priesthood, came down through Egypt, down through the mystery schools that, remember, Pythagoras got from there. He took those mysteries and learned all of them. Remember, in Egypt, they had both of the mysteries. They understood the top of the wheel and the bottom of the wheel. So, because the Jewish people went to Babylon, they got indoctrinated into the lower part of these teachings. Because these two gods were always fighting. And probably most of the people who were at that time were completely sincere. They really said, wait a minute, it says in our scriptures, you're not our Messiah. Well, they were right. Jesus was born of a virgin. Jesus is from the different mysteries. And Jesus said, when he comes in his own name, you will receive him. And he says, you will not see me henceforth until you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. You've got to recognize every knee shall bend and every eye will see and every tongue confess that he is Lord. Don't worry. The lower end's going to be saved. The harlot's going to be rescued. But it will be at the right time when Jesus comes and delivers this soul in bondage to this world. That's what that represents. So we have these two mysteries. Kabbalah is not the teachings, not the true teachings. Now you can learn a lot from looking at the Kabbalah, but understand that it's from an inverted perspective. And their Messiah is not the same as our Messiah. They are teaching things from a lower lens. They're seeing things with carnal eyes. They think it's about the flesh. They're looking at the letter of the law. They're not reading the Spirit, and they don't know the truth. So it's funny because the New Testament tells us that Jesus came and partook of flesh and blood, as did his brethren. This is a literal statement. And it says that anyone who does not believe that Jesus came in the flesh is an Antichrist, and this is the teachings of Antichrist. And Santos laughs in the face of those scriptures. And where the Bible says clearly, over and over again, not to be an idolater and worship the sun and the moon and the stars, he goes on public television or internet and says his whole teaching is based on the idea that Jesus is Satan. I showed you that clip. And what I'm asking you guys to do is, if any of you watch this channel, also watch his channel, please intervene. Help him. Write to him. Show your concern. We've got to try and wake him up, because he's teaching a lot of people this falseness, these lies. If people at this point in history do not understand that Jesus is the Christ, then they'll be looking for some other Christ. And this is what Santos has done. He's now looking for some salvation within himself, as though his own carnal nature is going to save him. If he meditates enough, or if he, takes an herb, or does something, or eats right, or is vegetarian, or he does this law, or keeps this law, right? Does some ritual, or, some Arios Gamos, some ritual about sex. You're not allowed to exchange juices or something. Well, you see, that's not the teachings of the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul says, we're not under any law, and the law is just about taste not, touch not, handle not, which is all going to be gone with the using of it. And so we're interested in, like Jesus said, the inside of the cup, the spiritual part. We don't care about the outside of the cup. The outside may be dirty. Remember when Jesus didn't wash his hands or something up to the elbows? And the Pharisees like, oh boy, you got to be clean. That's a law. Right? Keep all the laws. Make sure you keep all the laws. And Jesus was like, yeah, whatever. I ain't worried about the outside of the cup. I worry about the inside. Your cup is filthy inside. Your mind. You can be married and have a balanced relationship and not become addicted to sex. Okay? If you don't release any fluids, as he says, it isn't going to do you any good. It's still going to go out into the toilet and down the drain. Regardless of whether you did it or not, your body makes these fluids every day. Every day. You can't reuse them or whatever, as he thinks. And this is that little seed that's in there is nothing to do with eternal life. So he's being deceived. And he's now full-blown idolater, and I'm worried about him. So I'm asking everybody to go over there and see if we can do something, because get him to debate me, but, preferably just get him to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. You're right. I'm not going to teach that anymore. Because it's a shame. Anyway, guys, I have a lot more to say. So I'm going to do another video on this. And in the next video, I want to show you some scriptures that talks about these androgynous beings and what the 144,000 individuals are, and this great wedding, and this great mystery of the Arios Gamos and the true teachings. It's going to be great. Tune in tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get number 2 out. We've got a lot to say, friends. There's so many things I did not cover in this video. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great one.